Hello. Hello. Welcome to Sree's Sunday New York Times Read Along. Our guest this week is Sara Hamdan. You can find her on Twitter at Sara Hamdan, Sarahamdan. She's also on Instagram by Sara Hamdan. She's a journalist and author, formerly with New York Times and Google. She is the author of a new book that is getting rave reviews. What Will People Think? It's her first novel. Our host, of course, is Sri Srinivasan. We are live on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, and our Digimentors website. Please like, comment, share, retweet, do all the things you do on social media to make sure people can find the show. I want to particularly thank everyone watching on replay today. We really appreciate you taking the time to come back. We know a lot of people come back after the show, 8:30 a.m. Sunday, 4:30 p.m. Gulf Standard Time. It's not necessarily everyone's best time of day, but we appreciate you taking the time to come back and watch this show. Of course, there is so much in the news today with the announcement yesterday. President Trump announced strikes against Iran, having obliterated several sites, and I put that in very strong air quotes. But we'll also be talking about a special report in the New York Times on USAID and more. But we always want to thank folks for tagging friends and sharing this on Twitter in particular. We can say hi to a few folks that are watching. Jonathan is watching from the East Village. Jonathan is a very loyal viewer. I want to give a special shout out to Jonathan for being a guest on the mental health show that I co-host last 2 weeks ago, Shining Light on Shadows, a candid conversation about mental health. It focused on ageism in the delivery of mental health to seniors. A great show. Definitely encourage you to go find that link. I'll share that later. My mom is watching from Hastings-on-Hudson, New York, from a heated Hastings-on-Hudson. Yes, it has been hot on the East Coast and the Midwest even more so. But Mom, I hope your air conditioning is working, because we're having some issues down here in D.C. I'm going to be calling. I called our neighbor last night. We'll be calling the HVAC people today. But with that just quick hello, we have several other people who have checked in, but we want to bring on our host, Sri Srinivasan, to join us on stage. Hey, Sri.
Hey, Neil. Greetings to you and to everyone who's joined us. What a morning. Last night, as we exchanged messages when the news came in that President Trump had announced that he had, brought the U.S. into the war directly by attacking various nuclear sites in Iran. And I thought I would show you what the headline was yesterday. The front page of the New York Times yesterday was about Europe meets with Iran hoping to diffuse conflict. And you can see the size of the headline here. And then this morning's headline in the New York Times: U.S. attacks Iran's nuclear sites. B-2s drop payload of bombs as nation enters Israel's war. So you're seeing the way in which the power of print, the way a print newspaper can convey the importance of the news, kind of the weight of the headlines, as you can see here. Thank
Sweet.
you, everybody. Yeah.
I'm sorry to jump, but before you put the paper down, you noted when you looked at the headline, they put payload in quotes.
Yeah.
And I don't think I've seen that before. Any thoughts on why they would do that? Is payload a colloquial term? It seems pretty.
I noticed that too,
right?
and I was thinking that later on it says he added that a full payload in quotes of bombs. So they're trying to signal how much was put in. But I think for a lay reader, just seeing payload would be enough, and putting in quotes, I think, just confuses the issue there. The photograph here is from Marine One, the president's helicopter. It says President Trump on Saturday at Joint Base Air Andrews in Maryland. he announced the bombing of Iran's nuclear facilities hours later. And we'll look at the front page and talk about that in a moment. But we just want to thank everyone who's joining us. Please share this show with a friend. They can watch us live or later. And we have folks watching. We are grateful to everybody who's here. We're also live on scroll.in, one of India's most important and most popular independent news sites. So please check out scroll.in. We want to say hi to Ken Fisher, who's watching from Cedar Rapids in Iowa, Doug Levy, who is up in the San Francisco Bay Area at 5:30 a.m. We talk about it being 8:30 p.m. here, 8:30 a.m. here, but he's at 5:30 a.m. Naomi is watching from Rhode Island. And Jonathan, who we mentioned earlier, was on Neil's terrific show, Shining Light on Shadows, and he says it's an honor to appear there, and he always is here with us. And Jamil is watching as well, so thank you, everybody, for being here. We're going to meet Sara Hamdan in a few moments. Her book is What Will People Think, a novel, her debut novel. A young New Yorker must hide her fledgling stand-up comedy career from her straight-laced family until a buried generational truth threatens to peek out from behind the curtain in this heartfelt, funny debut novel. What I'd like to do now is just to look very quickly at what else is in the paper and to kind of understand this huge story. We're also keeping an eye on the television to see if there's any news that we want to bring you. So this way you will be able to keep abreast of that as well. We see Patricia is watching from New York. Welcome, Patricia. Jayesh tells us that it's 6 p.m. in India. Thank you. Diane is watching from Margate, New Jersey. And Patricia says hi to Sara. So we have a very newsy day. And this story is something that the news broke around 8 p.m. New York time. And then at 10 p.m., President Trump went live with the news. And immediately you saw kind of pushback from many Democrats and one Republican who said that this is a war that has not, America's entering this war without congressional approval. And what does this mean? What are the dangers of drawing other, American troops into the front lines of this battle? There are more than 40,000 American troops stationed all around the Middle East. And of course, hundreds of thousands of Americans live all around the Middle East. In addition, the news is, of course, about the war that's been going on for a week between Iran and Israel, ever since Israel did the first bombing about a week plus ago. And what is happening there and the number of civilian deaths and what's happening is being very closely watched. One sign of the escalation yesterday was when we got news about how Iran, before the strikes, was planning to is making plans for the U.S. eventually entering. They were given 2 weeks by Trump, but that timeline didn't hold. And the Ayatollah Khomeini basically announced all the successors to the various top Iranian military commanders who had been killed, and also made plans to announce his own succession plan in case he is killed. So that was the background when, at around 8 p.m., the news broke of the bombs being dropped by the U.S. Entering, and 30 American planes had been involved, and many of them had flown from Missouri all the way to Iran, fueling midair multiple times, and that's how this all went down. So that's what we're talking about. That's what we're looking at today. Let's also let's see what else is on the front page here. Our harrowing measles outbreak hits home from rural West Texas up to North Dakota. And we know that that's one of the big stories because of how RFK Jr., the health secretary, is approaching all things vaccines and all things health. There's also a big story here, 14 stormy days that wiped out an aid agency. It is about USAID and what happened. And there's a big story inside, 2 pages plus, where they talk about what happened in the decision making to end USAID. At the same time, Nick Kristof, the columnist, the award-winning columnist for the New York Times, has done live reporting from one of these aid sites where food, aid, medicines that would save hundreds of lives, thousands of lives, is rotting away because the US won't distribute it. It's already in place, but will not be distributed. So these are all coming together. These strands are coming together at the same time. There's also a big story in New York is all about the elections, the mayoral elections in New York. Andrew Cuomo is the former governor who is leading the Democratic primary, but the person who has gotten a lot of attention is Zohran Mamdani, a young assemblyman who is in the news, and the way he's been using social media has made him a clear number 2. And we'll see what happens. The election's on Tuesday. The story in the New York Times is about how volunteers and the candidates in 100-degree heat scrambled the mayoral primary, and that's a big story.
Sri, I wanted to just jump in to ask you, I mean, there's so many international stories that we're going to be talking about, USAID in particular, that it's a really big story online as well. But I want to ask you, being based in New York, talking about the mayoral race, the 2 main candidates, watching from DC at least, it seems like it's Andrew Cuomo. I would refer to him as the disgraced former governor who resurfaced to run for mayor, and Zohran Mamdani. As a Muslim American, do you think that he has a real chance at winning in New York?
Yeah, he's also a socialist. You know, being Muslim is one thing. Being a socialist is another in New York City, the Democratic Socialist. And when this all started, I think most people would have given him no chance. But now, combination of the way he uses social media, the way he has brought coalitions together, and the rank choice voting system New York has, where you have to rank different people, and then there are multiple rounds based on how the voting. So it's not enough just to be ranked number 1. You also want to make sure, even if you're not ranked number 1 by somebody, you're ranked number 2. And there's a lot of cross candidate endorsements going on. So it's a very unusual election. And one of the ways you know that Zohran Mamdani has a shot is how much money is coming in from outside New York and from New York to discredit him, to attack him for his views on a variety of topics, including what he has said in the past about Israel. And so if you turn on the local news here, it's just the airwaves are flooded with anti-Mamdani ads. And so that's how you know he's he's putting on pressure on Cuomo. But just the last thought on this, Neil, is that even no matter what happens on Tuesday, there's a good chance that both Cuomo and Mamdani will run in the general election, either as independents or in Mamdani's case, the working families ticket. So this is not over, as it typically is. Normally it's over whoever wins the New York City primary, because Democrats outnumber Republicans in New York City in the Democratic primary. That's who will win the election. But we have had Republicans in the past, of course, including Giuliani win the mayoral election here. So this is going to play out all the way through November, but it's going to give you a sense of how New Yorkers are also thinking about New York, who can help New York the most. And in fact, the metropolitan section of the New York Times has a cover story is the vibe in the city, talking to people. Is it, what is going on? Unbearable yet irresistible is the headline here. And they talk to lots of New Yorkers who ask, are we back or what's happening? And I love this headline because this captures New York really well. Life in a confounding metropolis. And our guest today, her novel is set in New York City. And so New York, of course, has that kind of global interest and attention. Let's
Absolutely.
quickly look at other folks who are watching. Paula, longtime host, producer of this show, is watching from Davenport, Florida, different part of Florida than she is usually. Pranya is watching from Silver Spring, Maryland. Apollo's watching from Philadelphia. We're so grateful to everyone who's watching live or later. John Lee is checking in from Maine. Thank you, John, former guest on this show. Kaveri Madhavan's watching from Ireland, award-winning novelist who has been on this show with us. And Doug Levy says he's sickened by the deaths caused by the callous, capricious cancellation of USAID programs. Nick Kristoff's reporting documents such horror. I hope Americans are paying attention and bring change. And Ken says Nick is a special human and a most credible journalist. And Sudha Parekh, Neil's mom, is pointing out that Zoran's mom is the famous filmmaker Meera Nair, who made Mississippi Masala and so many other great films. And his father is Mahmoud Mamdani, who is a very senior professor at Columbia University, who was head of the Africa Studies Department for many years. And Patricia says, I love New York, the heartbeat of the world. And good morning from Lancaster, Pennsylvania, where Linda is joining us.
Well, I popped on. I did not realize Zoran's pedigree. That is really impressive. You were talking about what might happen in the fall. Eric Adams is likely to run as an independent in the fall as well.
Correct. So he ran as a Democrat, won as a Democrat, and now is as committed to running as an independent in the fall. So the current mayor will be in the fray as well. So thank you for pointing that out. There's also going to be likely a Republican candidate from our youth, our childhood in New York, Curtis Sliwa, who founded the Guardian Angels, which was an organization of amateurs who would dress up with red berets and guard or help guard the
in the 80s.
In the 80s, help guard the subways, because the subways were that bad in
New York is incredible. We've elected Republican mayors, right? I mean, Giuliani, Bloomberg went Democrat, I think Republican, then independent, something like that. We've even elected a Red Sox fan as mayor. So, I mean, anything can happen. Maybe we'll have a Muslim Democratic Socialist.
Dr. Sujita says, hello to friends who keep my sanity intact. All right, Neil, so let's set up our guest for today by first reminding everybody that this show is brought to you by our friends at muckrack.com. Muckrack is a wonderful way to connect communications professionals with journalists. I hope if you're in that business, you have a membership, and all journalists sign up for free. So please check them out. And if you'd like to be a sponsor, let us know. And Digimentors is our company that does consulting on a variety of issues and topics, including digital marketing, event amplification, training and workshops, AI, policy strategy, scenario planning, and so much more. So with that, we want to hand it over to Neil to set up our guest.
So this is really great. We usually have focus on a lot of authors, but usually nonfiction. And this is one of the first fiction books that we focused on in a while. We had a chance to meet Sara in Dubai, Sri, when we were there last November for a Digimentors project. So that was a lot of fun. And the success she's had with her debut novel, set in New York, focusing on a Palestinian American who works at night in a comedy club. It's just incredible. But don't take my word for it in terms of trying to describe it. Let's have Sara actually describe a little bit about her book before we bring her on.
My name is Sara Hamdan, and I am thrilled to introduce you to my debut novel, What Will People Think?, launching in New York City, May 2025. As a former New York Times journalist, Google editor, and Netflix Story Award winner, this book marks a new chapter in my journey, and I just couldn't be more excited to share it with the world. My novel is about chasing dreams. Mia is a Palestinian American with a day job, but at night, she's lighting up the stages of New York's comedy clubs. This is a story about finding your voice and love in the most unexpected places. It's funny, it's heartwarming, it's apolitical, and it's unapologetically human. I am also a Palestinian American. I grew up in Greece and now live in Dubai with my Palestinian British husband and our 2 children. We believe in the power of positive stories. This book is for anyone who's ever felt torn between 2 worlds and still found a way to laugh through it all. Thank you for considering bringing Mia's laughter and heart to your readers.
And that's Sara Hamdan, journalist and author, formerly with New York Times and Google, joining us on the read along to talk about her book, What Will People Think? Sara, welcome to the stage.
Hello, Sri and Neil. Thank you so much for having me. And I'm so excited to see all the names and where everyone's from. This is such an honor. Thank you.
Thank you, Sara. We are so delighted that you could be with us on a very newsy day and weekend here. You live in Dubai, so I know that you are right in the middle of all the news that's happening. And so just want to ask you how you're doing. With our regular guests who are on the East Coast, we always apologize for waking them up at 8 o'clock to be on the show. Here you are in Dubai time, which means it's about 5 o'clock in the evening in Dubai. So tell us a little bit about how you're doing.
Thank you. And yeah, it is nerve-wracking. We're refreshing our feeds every 15 minutes just to see if there's something new that's happening. We wake up in the morning and we immediately go to the headlines. A part of it reminds me of how my parents were behaving when the Gulf War was happening back in the 90s. It just feels like a recycling of the same fears and sudden decisions that are made that are affecting people on such a normal day-to-day level, and they have these repercussions for years. So we are scared. We feel very safe here in the UAE. There's nothing happening. We're still going to school, and today the big thing was my daughter's wobbly tooth. So it just feels like normal life is still going on with this undercurrent of tension a little bit. And all we can hope for is that things become peaceful and calm down and we can just get back to living our normal lives.
You have your own history with dealing with kind of a war situation. Tell us about what happened in Kuwait.
Yeah, so it's funny because I actually remember, Sri, this is very meaningful for me today because you were my dean at Columbia Graduate School of Journalism 15 years ago. So we've seen each other over the years and all the progress, but I remember one thing you said to me at graduation right before you were about to announce my name. You said, "Where should I say you're from?" Sara Hamdan graduating and she is from. And it took me about 10 minutes to figure out what to tell you because I'm an American citizen. I have Palestinian heritage, but I grew up in Greece and I was born in Kuwait. I'm not a spy. I'm just a citizen of the world. My father is an engineer and he happened to be based in Kuwait for a little while. So I was there when the Gulf War erupted and it was the same thing. So it was normal life. And then overnight, it's like a match that strikes and gets ignited and lives changed. In our case, we were privileged. As Americans, we were taken to California where we lived for a little while before we settled in Greece. But I do remember that scramble, my mom trying to keep a calm face when I could tell she was a little bit worried. And it does bring up some of those feelings again, but we're all older and wiser now and hoping that we've learned from past mistakes. And I think this is part of what drove me to write this novel. You mentioned I've been a journalist for a long time. I've always written about art and culture and travel and just some of the beautiful and happy things that take place in the Middle East, because when you look at the news coming from this part of the world, it's so consistently negative and myopic and one note. And I just wanted to share other stories. So when I was at the New York Times, I was writing about these other things, female empowerment, tech startups, travel to unexpected places, that kind of thing. I actually met my husband because I wrote a piece about stand-up comedy in the Middle East. So I've always been doing this and telling other people's stories. And then I thought, you know what, it's time for me to write one of my own. And that's where this work, this What Will People Think, which is a novel, but rooted in a lot of deeply emotional moments that are personal. That's where the idea was born.
And you heard us talking all about New York and the mayoral election here. I know that by some standards it's a small election, but a lot of people are paying attention and have heard of what's happening from around the world. People know and are aware of what's happening here. So this is this the story from which you met Jamil? Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, this is the one. It was my very first article for the New York Times, and I was eager to impress my editor because at the beginning it was just a freelance basis before they took me on as a stringer. So I pitched a story about the rise of homegrown stand-up comedy in the Middle East. And I had about 5 comedians who I interviewed from different backgrounds, Egyptian and Syrian and just from all over, but based in Dubai. And they all kept telling me, you need to interview this guy named Jamil to make the story complete. He's not a comedian, but he's credited with bringing the Axis of Evil, which is a comedy group of Arab Americans, to the Middle East. And they did this sellout tour, and it's right there, and 27 shows in 5 countries. And he did this TED Talk about it that has over 1 million views. So he's kind of like the godfather of comedy. And we met. He was a little bit late to our interview, so I was annoyed. So our very first meeting, I had a very kind of, I just need to get this done. I'm on deadline face. But we became friends over the years. He's got a similar background in the sense that he has Palestinian heritage, but his mother is Irish, and he lived in the UK for a long time. So he's kind of that same hybrid that I am. And I think comedy's always had this nice little thread in my life. And that's where the seeds were born to create a character that's a female stand-up comedian because of the power of comedy and just uniting us. It's about that shared humanity, but it also has that personal note of bringing me to the love of my life. And I think that's what I wanted to accomplish there. So I brought my love story with Jamil in a work of fiction.
It's so great, Sarah. I want to actually just fact check in real time to make sure I heard the background correctly. I knew some of it, but it was you're Palestinian American, born in Greece. Did you say born in Kuwait and raised in Greece?
Yes.
And now living in Dubai.
Yes, and I lived in the
and
U.S.
went to school in New York.
Yes, I lived in California when I was young, briefly after the Kuwait War for a couple of years. And then I went back to the US for college. I was at Berkeley in California. And then I did grad school in New York, which is where I met Sri. So just, I'm
citizen of the world. Yeah, citizen of the
world. At home on an airplane,
But as you said, your book is for people, anybody who's been caught between 2 worlds, but you've been caught between multiple worlds. So what was that like growing up, and what are things that, you would never exchange for anything else, and what are some things you wish were different?
I really love this question, and I think I have 2 very clear answers. The first one is I always felt like a misfit everywhere I went because there was nobody I met who was exactly like me. But the flip side of that is that I could get along with absolutely anybody, and I think that's the reason why I was a successful journalist. So I'm just deeply interested in people and their stories and learning more about them because I've lived in so many different countries, been exposed to so many different cultures and religions and foods and ways of living that I think it's just given me this really nice bird's eye overview of how we're all really, really similar, how we all struggle to connect with our mother-in-law or want to make sure our children are fed or, all of these minute daily details that make us human beings. So I think that's informed a lot of my storytelling and a lot of my fiction. And part of it is a joy of discovery. So I still love to travel now. It's one of my favorite things in the world to do. And for a little while, I actually had a travel blog that was quite successful, but I had to give that up when I had children because I love to explore the world. And I love what Patricia said earlier, that New York is like the heartbeat of the world. It's the center, because I really, really felt that when I was living in Manhattan, when I was doing my grad school degree. It's just, this city has a different energy. I feel like I'm plugged into an electric socket, and it brings out something in every person. When you get on the subway, there's someone from a different place. Everyone you meet is from a different place. There's different kinds of food and music and all of that. So I wanted to make this novel partly an ode to New York City because I loved it so much, and it reflected who I am in a way that I don't see a lot. And I think it's helped me keep an open mind. A lot of us, when we hear about a country or a culture, we come in with these preconceived notions, whereas I do have that ability to just walk in with a blank slate and just see what this place has to offer and talk to the people and try the foods. And I think building this kind of empathy is so important these days. It's the number one thing that I try and teach my own children. See the world, talk to different people, spread kindness.
It's so beautiful, and I'm glad you're able to do that. Before we get back into the book itself, tell us about what are the differences between New York City and Dubai, and the similarities as well.
They're both wonderful cities. They're so energetic. And, I mentioned to you before that I have a love of discovery. I like to see something new and fresh. So after I graduated from college, I said on my resume that I'm a fluent Arabic speaker, which is stretching the truth a little bit because I grew up in Greece and my Arabic isn't perfect. But there was a job opening at Merrill Lynch in Dubai, and I thought, why not? I looked on a map and I said, this is so close to Asia and Africa and Europe. I'm going to have a great time on my vacation days off. So I packed my bags and I went to this place that was still new. New York is very established. It's busy and it's muscular and it's chaotic, and the streets, the taxis and all that. I came to Dubai and it was like watching a young city that was still figuring itself out at the same time that I was. So I arrived as a 21-year-old, bright-eyed. It was mainly desert. There were only a couple of places to hang out. And year by year, the city was suddenly overnight becoming this giant metropolis. It feels today, I've been here for 20 years now. It feels like Singapore or London. It's got a lot of soul. It has the peaceful desert and the old souks and all of that. But at the same time, it's got an incredible party scene. It's very safe for young families. It's got a beach. I go to swimming a couple of times a week after dropping my children off at school. It's a wonderful place to figure yourself out. And then what I personally liked about it is that there is a bit of a big fish, small pond element. So if you're good at what you do, you can really stand out. So I built this career here that sounds so amazing on paper. Working for Merrill Lynch and then Google for 6 years, the New York Times. So just these companies that are set here and looking for talent, I was able to raise my hand up and land these roles that I think it would have been difficult elsewhere in a more populated or competitive city. And like I said, it's just very, very safe to raise a family. So I can leave my children playing at a playground and not have to be like a hawk with my eyes on them. And we often don't lock our front door at night. We do now lately, but it's just a very safe and tolerant city. There are people from all over the world, all different faiths. So that openness that I mentioned to you, that's just ingrained in my personality, I really feel that here. There is no sense of othering that I feel in different communities. I mentioned to you that I grew up in Greece. I grew up in a town, tiny mountain town where everybody was Greek, and they still visit their grandparents who live in a village they don't even have passports. They've never traveled outside. So I always felt a little bit like an other. But here, everyone's from all over, and it's wonderful. You visited. What do you think of Dubai?
Yeah, it's, this is one of my favorite photos of Dubai because it captures this comparison. You can see that Toyota building was like the tallest building in the area, and you can see it's all desert. And then just a few decades later, look how Dubai has changed, and you've all seen those iconic photos, including of the Burj Khalifa, the tallest building in the world. And Dubai has that great energy, and we see that all the time when you're there, and how it's grown and how it'll keep growing. That's what's part of the story about that city, and so it's you've lived through some of that. But I love the comparison with New York, which has been, full of tall buildings and that energy for a century plus. And Dubai has not, in parts of the UAE even less than that. So that's been interesting, folks. We're talking to Sara Hamdan about her novel, What Will People Think? And this is her debut novel. And we're going to take your questions. If you have questions about writing, about being a novelist, about living in the Middle East, please ask, and we will bring the questions to her. Let's see, folks are tagging their friends, and I would love for everybody to do that. If you have a friend watching or who would be interested in this, they can watch live or later on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, on YouTube. Patricia has a question for you. She says, what was the final catalyst that inspired the start of the book, and any pivotal milestones that made that happen?
Thank you for your question, Patricia. I love that. I think, I was always writing on the side of my full-time jobs and raising kids, and I was always just writing these little scenes. And I think part of the reason why we tell stories is to make sense of the world around us a little bit. So especially after my time in New York, which I loved, and I wanted to be able to process as a young Arab American in this really incredible city, what's that like? I think living in New York sparked something in me to want to begin or set the story there. It does feel like the center of the world. And then I just needed a way to tell a story about New York that felt new and fresh, because the city is in every single movie and TV show and book that we read. So how can I possibly write about it in a way that feels new and different and unique? So for me, that's where the stand-up angle came in when I met my husband. So it was kind of like these building blocks. First came New York, and then came meeting my husband in the stand-up comedy. And I thought, okay, the comedy scene in New York is something that is exciting and established, and it's where comedians make their mark. So what if I had an Arab American comedian, and what if I made her a woman, which is less common? My husband and I go to stand-up comedy shows all the time, and it's still rare to see a woman go up on stage. So it's something that you note. So I just thought this would be great. Okay, I have my main character now. And then if I make her somebody who's trying to figure herself out, coming of age, I can draw on my own memories and experiences when I was living in New York in my early 20s. So that's where that came about. And then the second piece of that is that half of the book takes place actually in Jaffa, Palestine in 1947. And Mia, the main character, who's the stand-up comedian, she discovers her grandmother's diary that details back to an illicit love affair with a British soldier at that time. And it's a very pivotal time in the history of Palestine. It's a turbulent one, a tricky one. So from a writer's perspective, this is very meaty this conflict is very meaty for a setting. So I drew on my own influences from my grandmother's stories of having left at that time. And I just wanted to write about the simple village life that they have. A lot of women get sidelined in these conversations about these big political events that happen. And I just wanted to honor the women who lived in those towns and what happened to them. How did they leave, under what circumstances, but in a way that felt just rooted in family and in love and culture, setting aside the political stage, whatever happens on the political level. So that's where the two main influences came in. And about the pivotal moment, I've been wanting to tell this story for so long. It's taken 10 years from the idea to publication. And I mentioned before that part of the reason why it took me a long time is because I was working full time. I had 2 children. There was a pandemic. Life gets in the way, job loss, grief, all of these things. It just wasn't a priority. But then There was this one incredible moment during the pandemic when I was so burned out. I was working as an editor-in-chief at Google at the time. I was homeschooling my 2 young children. They were under the age of 5. It was exhausting. And it was one of those moments when I was thinking, how am I living my day to day? How am I using my time intentionally? Is this how I want to live? And I saw on Netflix's Twitter handle that they had a competition. They wanted a single page that was a scene that featured a main character with the same background as whatever you are. So I took a page out of this novel, the Palestinian American stand-up comedian in New York, and submitted it. And I completely forgot about it. And 6 months later, I was in London accepting a Netflix award for a scene from this book. This was amazing, not just for the award itself, but because I realized I'd been holding myself back for so long to put the story out there, because I just thought, is anyone going to care about a novel that features 2 Palestinian women as the leads? Can this possibly go mainstream? Is this worth my time? I mean, I have big jobs, I have children. Is this worthy? And this award meant, yes, go ahead, Sara, do it. You got this. There are people who are interested in this. And now it feels so wonderful to have told a story that has a little bit of joy and is uplifting and shows that the world can be a better place. I hope that doesn't sound naive to say, but this is genuinely about our love for each other and shared humanity through and through. And at the beginning, I was a little bit nervous that it was coming out in this emotionally charged environment, but I actually think this offering is what I can give in terms of hope and love to the world now.
What a story and what a journey. I think most of us are hearing for the first time that there is such a thing as a Netflix Short Story Award. And congrats on that. I hope the Netflix folks are considering this for an adaptation. I'm sure it'll be, it's very visual. Even as you're reading it, you can feel and imagine the scenes, as we do with a lot of novels now. So I'm hoping that's the case. In the way you've marketed the book and the way you've talked about it, you've said it's an apolitical book. How do you keep it apolitical when a lot of the topics you're writing about are political, and you also, or are inherently political, and you also, there are a lot of jokes that she makes in her stand-up that would be considered, obviously political or jokes of its time. So how do you do that?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And, I think the Palestinian identity is so politicized that people almost bristle when you bring it up, because they think, oh, when we bring up this conversation, does it mean we're going to get drawn into a heated debate? So my premise here was just to be able to tell a story that features 2 women, that focuses on their pursuit of love and what family means to them. So that was the challenge. Can I tell a story that doesn't discuss conflict? And I think I've achieved that. I think this is why it's gone mainstream and it's gotten all of this incredible media attention, because it's humanizing, and it's got a rom-com feel on the surface. There's an office romance that happens, but then it's got the emotional depth of this displaced family from the 1940s in Palestine, and you understand the repercussions. So when I say apolitical, I just mean that somebody wouldn't pick this up and read the kind of messaging you might find in Ta-Nehisi Coates's book, The Message. If you're looking for that kind of experience, there are other novels and other incredible works of nonfiction that you can turn to for educational or for that debate. But this is a love story at its heart, and I think we don't see enough of that. Like I said, growing up, I never saw a book that features Arab female protagonists that didn't have to do with war or conflict or oil or oppression or, all of these dark things. So I wanted to intentionally, I say apolitical in the sense that it's the women and it's love at the forefront. What's happening, their circumstances, of course, the issues that we are seeing in the news today are there, but at the forefront, you just have the women and how they're dealing with their day-to-day and the right to love who they want to love.
Great. Folks, the novel is What Will People Think by Sara Hamdan. Please check it out, and please tag a friend who can who would be interested in this conversation or would be interested in getting the book. I'm seeing that Sujana is tagging her friends. Everybody should do this. Dr. Tachi is watching from Fort Lauderdale, former guest on the show when we were live together in Miami. And Dr. Tachi says the changes in Dubai are astonishing. And look at what Diane's doing, Jamie, a show for you. There's lots of comments coming in. Here is Ken tagging Avalon saying this is a segment for you, and Diane tagging Bill. As a journalist and comedian, thought you would love this show. So this is how we get the word out. So everyone, please share with a friend or reshare on all of these platforms. And Dr. Tachi is also congratulating you on the award. Would love to have you read a little bit of the book so that we can get a sense of its pages. So as you're getting ready, I'll just look through some of these other comments here. And Neil has also put in where folks can get it on Amazon, of course, otherwise your favorite bookstore, your favorite independent bookstore as well. Patricia says it's a heartfelt story. And Mary C. Curtis, longtime collaborator, friend of the show, guest of the show, looking for some great tips, watching from Charlotte, North Carolina. So we'll, in a little bit, we'll get to some tips for people who are writing novels. A lot of journalists want to be novelists as well, and some great historical writers have been novelists who used to be journalists and had that eye that come from being a journalist. So let's get a little preview of the novel from your reading, and we'll pick up the questions after that. Folks, you're watching the Sunday New York Times Read Along live on all of these platforms as well as on scroll.in.
Okay, I've got a scene for you from What Will People Think that's early on in the novel. Mia is the protagonist. She's a Palestinian American. She's a stand-up comedian in secret. So her family and her best friends and her colleagues don't know that she has this hobby where she's actually really outgoing and sometimes raunchy. But by day, she keeps to herself, and she's respectable and so mindful, so demure. So this is a scene when she's out with her friends at a bar. And I picked it because it's very relevant to what's going on today. Okay. That night, I had sipped on my sparkling water, watching callers and chatter loosen up around me. I picked at the lemon in my glass with a toothpick. I envied the pink-faced freedom, the lowered inhibitions, the complete disregard for tomorrow's headache of the rest of the group. I was like a ladybug at a loud picnic. There, but not there, but there. We ended up meeting a group of NYU law students, and soon enough, the "where are you really from" questions started. The discussion turned to Arabs in America, and then the inevitable. I became the evening's unofficial spokesperson on all Middle Eastern affairs. Oh, your family's from Palestine originally? I don't know much about Pakistan. I have Indian friends, though. Hey, is anyone up for curry after this? Organized religion is crazy. Is your family really religious? Is that why you aren't drinking? Hey, I know a Mormon who... What is your expert opinion on Iran or Iraq or, brackets, insert Muslim country currently making headlines in the news? And finally, is it weird for you living here after 9/11, or are you one of those conspiracy theorists? All I could think about was that I didn't want to be connected to the tragedy of 9/11. I shouldn't have to be. Almost a decade later, thinking of that day still made me feel sick and helpless, emotional beyond the scar that every New Yorker carries, a personal loss. I offered bland responses in the moment, wanting to avoid every outing turning into a political debate. I knew I'd come up with clever responses to their questions on the subway ride home or much later in the shower. In fact, many of those responses ended up flavoring my stand-up comedy sets. Arabs love spicy food. Know what we like to put in our tacos? Jalapenos. End scene.
Nice, well done. One of the things I learned in the book is that Mia's favorite flavor of potato chips is salt and vinegar, which is what I like as well. So immediately connected with her. Tell us how much of Mia is you and you are Mia?
You know, I get this question a lot. I think I think as a writer of fiction, I finally got a license to play a little bit. So there's a lot of imagination there. I got to experience life as a comedian through Mia's eyes, but it was based on my own experiences of going to comedy clubs and meeting comedians through my husband. So I think that's where some of the personal elements came in. When I talked to my grandmother about her childhood in Jaffa, and she would describe to me the beach or the local grocery store and those kind of small details I was able to bring to life. But there was also the journalist Sara, who did a lot of research. So there were scenes that took place in 1947 through the eyes of a British soldier. I had to go to libraries and comb through public archives, the British National Army website, to understand exactly what a British soldier would look like and how he would behave if he was stationed in the British Mandate of Palestine at that time. What color was the uniform? What brand of cigarettes did he smoke? So there was a lot of research. I think all art is personal on some level. I think you want to feel that emotion that comes through, and that's what a person will connect with at the end of the day. And this is what I hope that readers will take away from this. If you've ever felt like you're in between, or sometimes it's not even a misfit in terms of culture. It could be that you're the one person in your family who behaves a little differently to everyone else. You know, if you're the only musician in a family of doctors, you might feel like a misfit. So I think there are a lot of very universal themes in this that I tried to play up. And definitely there are some personal elements, but it's fiction at the end of the day. My grandmother was not in love with a British soldier. So.
Wanted to just show folks this idea of journalists turned novelists, and some folks who some of our audience may not even know as journalists at all. But here's Charles Dickens, Mark Twain, Bram Stoker, who wrote the Dracula books, H.G. Wells, P.G. Wodehouse, Rebecca West, Ernest Hemingway, Margaret Mitchell, who wrote Gone with the Wind, Gabriel Garcia Marquez. So you can see Maya Angelou. Look at all of these folks who have had huge success. The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, Stieg Larsson's book in Sweden, Geraldine Brooks. So many folks have made that transition. What do you think are the reasons why journalists can sometimes be good novelists?
I think being a journalist provided excellent training in having an eye for a good story, knowing when to start a story, knowing how to craft a realistic and relatable character. So a lot of the little mannerisms or quirks that a character might have are inspired by people that you meet. So just that practice of interviewing people and writing about them every single day for many, many years made it easy to sit down and take on a task that feels gargantuan. Sitting down and writing a novel is a big and scary task for many people. I think a lot of readers have come to me and said, I'm an aspiring writer. I'm a journalist and I'd love to write a book. What advice do you have? And I think that's it. It's just, it feels like it's such a big thing, but being a journalist and writing articles every day makes it feel like if you do that for yourself, and after a while, all of those articles, all of those chapters can become a novel. So it was just the absolute best training. And in my case, reporting on art and culture and travel and all of these very interesting ideas, it helped with my novel, and writing for the New York Times. So having this base in New York was perfect for me.
And there are some of those tips, Mary, that you wanted. Sara has already come through. Kaveri Madhavan, the author of The Inheritance, award-winning novel, is saying she's going to order your book immediately. She's watching from Ireland.
I love that. Thank you.
And Dr. Tachi says, love the book excerpt. Looking forward to reading the book. What's a tip for how you pick what excerpt to share, and how did you pick the excerpt for the short story prize? For those of you who missed it, one of the ways in which Sara knew she had something special was she submitted a single page from the novel for a Netflix short story award. And that's how she knew when she won the award 6 months later that she was on to something special. So how did you pick both there and for your readings? How do you pick what to share?
Well, for today's reading, it's one that worked really well when I read it at a previous event. So I knew that it was going to be relevant, but it's short and sweet, so it's not too long, but it gives you a flavor of how she feels in relation to others and how she wants to feel accepted and that she belongs, but she always has to explain herself a little bit. And that mindset is also what informs her comedy. Her comedy is often about cultural stereotyping or wanting this sense of togetherness. So I think it's a really interesting scene to set the stage for who she is and why she does what she does. The scene that won the Netflix Short Story Award, I was trying to find it in the book. It's an exchange between Mia and Phaedra, who is a Palestinian American lecturer at Juilliard who moves into the building where Mia lives. Mia doesn't have any other Arab American friends. So Phaedra is kind of the catalyst who helps to bring her out of her shell a little bit, because she sees this woman who is a musician and a lecturer and so unapologetically herself and open about her creativity in a way that Mia aspires to be. And the scene that won the Netflix award is about Mia and Phaedra walking towards the subway. They're going to a bar to meet some friends again. And in this case, a group of guys come up and they start flirting with them and asking them where they're from. And there's a little bit of a humorous exchange, but it's just a scene that takes them from their apartment where Phaedra is praying, and then she puts on makeup to leave the apartment. And then they find themselves in the bar where Mia's thinking to herself, oh, I really think this bartender is cute and I don't know if I should go for it. And she's holding herself back. So it's a hint of cultural expectation, but also behaving the way that you want to in a city that's exciting. And it just, it brings to life all of these ideas that are in a young woman's head in New York as she's trying to figure herself out and meet a guy that she likes.
Thank you. Debbie, longtime viewer of the show and friend, says, what kind of exchanges do you have with Israeli and Jewish colleagues or friends?
Thank you for your question. I think it's an important one today. The job that I had right before this was actually as the managing editor of a tech company based out of California they behaved kind of like a venture capital firm that invested in tech startups all around the world. Many of them were based in Israel, and my day-to-day involved having exchanges with many of them. Now, as an author, I mean, the book just came out a month ago, and I haven't had a chance to tour properly or go around and experience the kind of feedback from colleagues from Israel or who are Jewish, but I welcome it. And again, I think that stories like this are very important to have an understanding of different perspectives. My grandmother, so I mentioned to you that she was part of the inspiration for some of the scenes that took place in Jaffa in 1947. Her neighbors in her house growing up were Jewish, and there was never this divide of us versus them. All of this happened much later. So I think I love this question because I do hope for a future that includes a more peaceful energy between the two. And I hope that you will read the book, and I'd love to hear your feedback.
Thank you, Debbie, for the question. Neil?
I just wanted to pull in a few comments, Sri, from folks who are watching that aren't showing up in our feed, but I want to make sure they know that we're seeing them. On LinkedIn, Gudrun Smith is watching. You said earlier, excited to hear Sara's insights. Sounds like a fascinating episode, and in fact, it has been. On Facebook, our friend Naomi Service also said earlier, thank you for eloquently describing your personal journey and hopes for peace. Your debut novel reminds me of TV's The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. Sounds like a must-read. Congrats. So I just wanted to thank everyone for watching. We're putting on comments. One of the things that we, is a hallmark of the show that we produce is we can put on comments like Deborah's and others on the show, but we also make sure to keep an eye on our feeds in case anything is missing. We want to bring on as well. Ron Thomas is watching from Verona, New Jersey. So thank you, Ron.
Ron is usually based in Dubai, so it's great that he's from here.
Oh.
But
And
he's our most loyal Dubai watcher until Sara now, of course.
Oh, I love it.
well, I was going to make sure to connect the two of you. And then also, I want to mention that on Twitter, Anita Joe was asking. First of all, she was remembering the episode we have with Kaveri about the inheritance, which you referred to earlier, Sri. But she actually asked a question, Sara. Did having a deadline as a journalist help you in writing your book, and/or with your writing habits in general? You talked about the background of being a journalist and interviewing people and kind of the storytelling aspect. But what about the deadline part of it? What can you talk a little bit about what that was like, both as a reporter? Everyone who has a background in journalism knows nothing motivates you like a deadline. Is it the same when you have a book and you have an advance and you have your publisher is kind of following up with you? Okay, when's that next chapter? When's that draft? Talk a little bit about that, and then we'll be transitioning shortly to the New York Times.
We're going to move to this in a minute. Yep. Go ahead, Sara. Great question, Neil. Thank you. And Anita.
That's a fantastic question. And I think that's part of the reason why it took me so long to complete this book, is because I didn't have a deadline, aka that's not a priority. So it took me a long time to set my own deadlines and my own goals for the book. And I think after winning that Netflix award, I won a spot in a fellowship that was a year long, and I had a mentor. And that's when I had a weekly check-in with this mentor, and I thought that became like a deadline because I needed to show progress with my work. We went through about 5 drafts together, and by the end of the fellowship, I had signed, I had 6 agents offering to represent me, which is unbelievable because in my previous efforts, I had something like 25 rejections. So now with the help and with the very polished manuscript, I suddenly had them fighting over me. And then the book went to auction, and the bidding war resulted in a 6-figure 2-book deal that was quite significant. So now it's taken me 10 years to go from idea to publication of What Will People Think? And I have 10 months to write the second book. And that felt like a tremendous pressure. But just like Neil said, a journalist loves a good deadline. So I find it much easier now. And like I mentioned before, up until last June, I was working full time. So now I finally can call myself an author. And I've left my day job and I can write every day. So I'm very disciplined. Again, the journalistic training helps in arriving at my computer every day, and I don't need to light a candle or wait for the light to hit a certain way in order to feel inspiration. There's a deadline. I have to write until my kids come home. So I'm able to just sit at the computer and go. And it also takes that pressure off of having to write something perfect every single time. As a journalist, you're always writing articles and then they go live and hundreds or thousands of people might read it and you might get feedback that you don't like. So it gave me that thick skin because nowadays you might get reviews that are not 5-star every time, but you learn that you have to come back and keep going. And something will resonate with even one person in a very deep way, then you've done your job well. And that's true of articles that I've written, and it's true of the book now. And I've been overwhelmed with incredible reception for this novel. So it made the New York Times book review, recommended by Forbes and Yahoo and Goodreads and NPR, National Public Radio. So I got this wonderful hit, dopamine hit of, wow, people love it. But there are also 1-star reviews on Goodreads that come every now and then. Not everyone's going to love everything you do all the time across the board. So being a journalist helped with all of these different elements. And again, at the end of the day, reaching some people in a way that is deep is very, very meaningful.
Great to see the reviews. Lubna asked, "What was your experience at Berkeley and the impact it had?" We talked about Columbia. So, and is Lubna someone you know?
Hi, Mom.
Amazing. That's
Hi,
great.
Mom.
My
Auntie. Say hi, Auntie. Yeah.
My wonderful, supportive mother. She's amazing. Berkeley had a big impact on me because it was the first time that I was away from home and living on my own. So I grew up, like I mentioned to you, in a small town in Greece where everybody knew everyone. And I was suddenly halfway across the world away from my family and studying. And Berkeley's a very competitive university. And there was that first experience of having to really prove myself and being around really smart minds all the time. How was I going to make it? So I think my experience at Berkeley taught me that when you're really good at what you do, it doesn't mean that you can be complacent. You actually have to work even harder to stay on top. And I think this is it's a mentality that I've carried through into all of my different jobs and career moves. And I also made incredible friends while I was there. So sometimes you realize that I recognized at a young age, it's not just about the career progression or getting that A, but it's also about the relationships that you have. And I think that's also what informed my work. And finally, my second book will be taking place partly in Berkeley because it's another American city that I know intimately well. So it had a great impact on me. It was just hard to be away from my mom.
Naomi says, accepting rejection is a necessary link to future success, as evidenced by her amazing story. Kudos. Sara is asking where we can ask questions. And right there, you're on LinkedIn. Just post your question there and we'll bring it here. And Ellen is late, but we're happy to have you. And our show will run on all of these channels once we're off the air, so you can catch up. Please tag a friend. Please tell a friend about the novel. It's called What Will People Think? And I know in the Arab culture, that's something that people care a lot about, but also in South Asian and Indian culture, that's a big thing. What will people say? What will they think? So what we want to do now is to transition to looking at the New York Times. We're about 25 minutes with Sara, and she'll jump in where she's comfortable adding some commentary or ask me a question or anything that she'd like to do. But otherwise, I'm going to look at the paper, Sara, and we'll come back to you with more questions and comments about the book as well. So the headline, of course, is U.S. attacks Iran's nuclear sites. B-2s drop payload of bombs as nation enters Israel's war. And now we're just waiting to see what, if anything, Iran will do in response. Another big story here is about measles outbreak in the U.S. and volunteers in 100-degree heat may scramble mayoral primary, and that's the race that we've described earlier between Andrew Cuomo, former governor, and Zoran Mamdani, the assemblyman who is looking to be the first democratic socialist and Muslim American to be mayor of New York City. They're the two closest rivals in the primary. And there's a feature looking at how New Yorkers are thinking about their city. Is it off the rails or is it back on track? And this is a stunning story that I hadn't heard about, even though it's been making the news in other places. But once it made it in the Times, I heard about this. The University of Florida's law school gave an award to somebody who argued, a self-described Nazi who's very anti-Semitic. He wrote a capstone project for a Trump-appointed judge who was teaching a class where he said that we the people and the Constitution is all for white people only. This is part of that originalism argument that makes it into the news sometimes in the Supreme Court and other places. And he won an award for that. And the institution said that it's neutral, so it can't do anything about this award. But imagine a Nazi and an anti-Semite writes a paper like this for law school, and a judge gives him an award, and it's just absolutely horrifying. 14 stormy days that wiped out an aid agency, and this is about USAID, and that story goes inside in much greater detail. Here is, the New York Times does all kinds of stories. There's a story about how K-pop bands are about K-pop in today's paper. There's also here to help 4 ways to trick yourself into taking a walk. soak in the sounds, try a calendar challenge, count something as you walk, concentrate on a color. So Sarah, I don't know how you get your exercise, but I know when I come to Dubai, the place I go to get my steps in is in the mall.
Yeah, I mean, when the summer heat hits, it's hard to be outdoors. It's very hot and humid. That front page article that you were mentioning, the heat was going to scramble the mayoral elections. I'm thinking we have that every day. But it's like any other place where there are extreme temperatures, like in Canada when it snows, you have to just walk indoors and you adjust. But I will say that early morning or late evening walks or swimming at the beach, it's so therapeutic. I love to do it. And walking is the best way for me to work out story ideas, actually. So when I feel like I'm stuck or the words aren't flowing the way that I want to, I just get up and I start walking, and it always, always works.
I wanted to jump in real quickly because our friend Ron Thomas is watching. He's well known for his walkabouts when he does when he travels. Whenever he goes to a new city. And Sri, you didn't mention your own walking. More importantly, not just in terms of the steps, but for several years, you used to use your walks to meet with people and do Facebook Live conversations as you went along. We did one very memorable walk in DC, going from through the zoo all the way down to the White House several years ago. So I think you can always combine tricking yourself into walking. If you combine that with some social media and meeting someone for a bit, it's always a great way of working that in.
Absolutely. And here's Apollo saying racist, gonna racist, shame on the University of Florida. And Ron Thomas, it says Al Seef is my favorite walking area in Dubai, early morning. He's usually up and out well before sunrise. And Mary says, you can bet if a black or brown law student argued that white should lose the right to vote and that non-white should be driven out of the country, they would not have won that prize. So that's just terrible. Here are a couple of stories about Ukraine and Russia. Ukraine warned its teenagers of enemy hiding in their phones. There's recruitment going on by Russia. And then look at this, no surprise here. Trump sends special envoy to Belarus, courting ties with Russia's closest ally. And so that's the story there. Let's see what else is in the paper. There's an unusual thing here, Sarah. A whole page ad for the Onion. This is incredible. So Congress, now more than ever, our nation needs your cowardice.
Wow.
Entitled child expects to eat lunch every day. Girl literally wants food to be handed to her on a plate. And Christian faith, an important part of who senator pretends to be. And the only news outlet that exists, The Onion. So for those of you who are not familiar, obviously this is comedy. And they have taken on an ad asking people to join and become members, part of their fundraising effort. So I've not seen this before. One of the things I wanted to mention, Sarah, is that humor is tough, right? Comedy is hard. How did you know when the jokes you were writing were going to land properly? I mean, they land in the story because obviously it's the audience is reacting and it's you control the audience. But how did you know it would land with readers as you're doing this? And we're just going to scan through the paper as you answer that.
Yeah, I mean, it's really tricky because it's not being performed. So you're reading this on a page and it's describing her mindset as well as she's delivering these lines. So it's very different to sitting and watching a stand-up comedian perform. Even on the best comedy nights, there's always something that might sound offensive or off color or just flat or not funny. So I think part of it was for me to take that pressure off that every single line needed to be hilarious and perfect. It was more about her expressing how she feels being Arab American in New York City. And I think that's what came across. So you will see some reviews that say, oh my God, I was laughing so much and this was brilliant. And you'll see some other reviews saying, meh, the comedy didn't really hit it for me, but I can appreciate the sentiment or something like that. So I think comedy is really, really hard to do. Great comedy is very hard to come by. And as far as the Onion ad, I mean, I think that's bold, and sometimes all of the news sounds like The Onion, and without the branding at the top, you may be excused for thinking it's all just the world has gone mad a little bit. So
One of the lines we always say on this show is, "You've got to laugh, otherwise you're going to laugh sometimes, otherwise you'll be crying all day." Naomi says The Onion is as hilarious as Andy Borowitz from the
Yeah.
paper, who writes those hilarious columns. Let's look at the paper, 14 tumultuous days that leveled USAID. This is a story that's so sad because of how America's soft power is disappearing before our eyes, even as it uses its its very hard power in terms of the bombings that took place overnight. And we had said that Nick Kristof has a piece about from a warehouse where food that could help, food, drugs, medicines that could help thousands of people is going to expire because America is not distributing. It's already in place, ready to go, but is not being distributed. Airline chiefs' remarks contain jarring echoes, passages replicating ones found in another post-crash statement. This is a story about the Air India plane crash that took place last week, and how the statement was basically kind of plagiarized from another plane crash from another CEO, and the remarks were very similar. Britain's so hot that people are buying air conditioners. Dubai is, of course, an air-conditioned city, but England is famous for not always having air conditioning, but now they're buying air conditioners. And let's see what else is happening here. Embraced in deep red Iowa, Ukrainians are now in limbo. So they were embraced, but now with the culture wars, even foreigners like Ukrainians are getting pulled into these stories and what's happening there. This is a story about measles and the measles outbreak. Contagion crawls from West Texas to North Dakota, and that's because of JFK Jr. And here's New York Times has a 2-week teen program. Follow your curiosity and learn with the Times. So it's a kind of school of the New York Times where you can study in New York City for 2 weeks. And in Oregon, Rich Cake converts vegan skeptics. So are there lots of vegan options now in Dubai? It's a place of great food. And is that something that's also growing the way it is here in the US?
I think so. There was a New York Times article that came out about a year ago saying that Dubai has more restaurants than New York City now, and they cater to people from all around the world. So you're seeing a lot of vegetarian and vegan restaurants that are Indian. You're seeing a lot of Latin American cuisines that also, again, cater to vegans. So I think we really do have it all here. We're spoiled for choice.
I love this series. It's called 50 States, 50 Fixes. We're telling one story from every state, and we'd love to hear from you. We're looking for stories of people, groups, or organizations that are fixing environmental problems from the state level down to the backyard. So if you have ideas and for a state that they haven't covered yet, you can share that. And here's Harvard and Trump administration restart talks to end their bitter dispute. That, of course, is a big story here. And they have started, after saying that the State Department is going to stop doing student interviews, they're now restarting them. Sara, that international students make a big part of not just Harvard, but universities around the country in red and blue states. And one thing that they're doing is they're restarting the interviews, but they want everyone's social media to be open to the public so they can check out their social media. I'm sure you've seen those stories. The Times Magazine, go ahead.
I was just going to say my debut was meant to be at Harvard Bookstore, and we ended up doing a virtual event just because the news happened the day that I was about to fly out for it. So I'm really hoping I'll be able to come back when things are a little bit smoother, and both, American and international students will be able to attend events like this without any concern.
Here's the New York Times special issue, a magazine, Learning to Live with AI. And this is a striking cover of the thinking figure, but you can see the actual head is here. I thought the head was replaced by this light, but it's not. So that's good. And so this is all about everyone is using AI for everything. talking about jobs, so a bunch of different, and how AI sees us. I think that's interesting. And chat therapy, always available, never judgmental. The AI shrink will see you now. And that's a positive spin on this. You've heard of stories, Sarah, where the AI told people to do self-harm, to leave their partners, all kinds of things. So we have to be very, very careful with all this technology. We had a question earlier about how AI has changed the way you write or how authors write. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm just echo what you were saying a little bit earlier. I think the number one category that people are turning to ChatGPT for lately is therapy. So there's a giant responsibility, and you have to wonder what it's encouraging people to do or how to encourage them to behave. So I agree. In terms of how it's affected journalism, I think it's a really difficult time to be an entry-level journalist now, because a lot of those stories where we cut our teeth in terms of things that feel kind of rote, like stock market reporting, something that happens every day and you just have to do an update. A lot of that is being replaced by AI. But then again, we're seeing things like, I was reading yesterday, The Atlantic is offering journalists $300,000 salaries. So I think if you're at a more senior level and you have something to say, there's apparently still value in that. I'm curious what you think, because you were a dean of a journalism school for so many years. You probably have more insight than me.
No, you're describing exactly what's happening. There's a lot of confusion about what this means. I think jobs are going to be affected, not just in media, but in every industry. Are going to, 10, 20% of jobs are going to be lost, some much higher percentage. And so it's going to I don't think bureaucrats talk about it enough, government officials, companies, nonprofits, everyone needs to focus on this issue. And I don't think they're doing enough about that. And the cover of the book review is actually about AI as well. And they review two books: The Empire of AI, Dreams and Nightmares. They're both by journalists. Dreams and Nightmares in Sam Altman's OpenAI by Karen Howe, and The Optimist, Sam Altman, OpenAI, and the Race to Invent the Future by Keach Hagee. So you can
I
see,
used to work with her.
yeah, you can see that with 2 years now, 2.5 years of generative AI being so popular, you're seeing books like this. We just have a couple of minutes more, so want to just look at the Arts and Leisure cover is Uncovering Her Own Past. In her document, My Mom Jane, Mariska Hargitay, who is the daughter of Jane Mansfield, talks about the legendary actress, talks about a lifetime of family secrets. You have secrets in your novel, Family Secret, that comes out in What Will People Think, Sarah's debut novel. And so here is Mariska talking about that. And Sunday Styles she is half of a Trump world power couple, but she's on Team Elon. It's gotten complicated. Katie Miller is in quite a spot. And Katie Miller is married to Stephen Miller, and less said about him, the better, though he, of course, is doing so much damage right now. The Sunday Business cover is When Old Money Palm Beach Meets MAGA. And you can see here, Sarah, that so many of these stories are about politics and about Donald Trump and all the impact it's having. These ports are ground zero in Trump's trade war. It's about Los Angeles County, but so much more. The Sunday Opinion cover is The Shattering of America's Sports Culture. We used to come together for big games. Now we're divided by paywalls and streaming services. That's one of the things that's happened. And the Supreme Court has proved that it's blind to the realities of transgender people. There's about a big transgender case that was decided. And a nuclear-armed Iran would be an unacceptable threat to U.S. security and a failure of U.S. deterrence. And who's the mad king? The British guy upset about his runaway subjects, or the American who lives in the White House? So this is all in the Sunday paper. Today we give our audience a taste of the paper, but our main work, of course, is interviewing great guests like Sara. We do this, folks, on 8:30 a.m. on Sundays, Eastern Time. We are taking the next 3 weeks or so off for travel as well as holidays and things, but we will be back, and we are live 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time, and you can find our archive at digimentors.com group. We'd love for you to go back and take a look. What we'd like to do now, Sara, is to give you a moment off camera and come back to have you talk a little bit more, like a final pitch for the book and why everyone should get it. Meanwhile, Neil and I are going to chat. So Neil, welcome back to the show. And this was so much fun to talk to Sara, and the way she talks about her work and the work she's done, this comes together so beautifully.
Absolutely. And I think her personal story is so compelling in terms of that, being a citizen of the world and having so many different perspectives. She talks about her second novel being based in Berkeley since she went to school there. I could see several novels coming from her in terms of she can write about, Greece, Kuwait, life in Dubai with all the restaurants and stuff, the life that she's built up there. It definitely was interesting. And to bring it back to New York, Palestinian American comic in New York dealing with family stories and family history is just incredible. I want to make sure that we bring up a little bit of some of the praise that she's gotten for the book. Family secrets, comedy, and scandals take center stage in this hilarious, heartfelt coming-of-age story. But Cecilia Ahern, a beautiful read. She's author of P.S. I Love You. Mo Amer, if you haven't watched Mo Amer's comedy series on Netflix, it's hilarious. He calls it superb, but timely yet timeless story. And Neely Tubati Alexander, a funny, perfectly timed, charmingly on-point take on the dualities of life. A couple of quick announcements, Sarit, before we bring Sara back on. As you mentioned, we're going to take a few weeks off. So we're going to take between travel and vacation the next 3 weeks. We won't have a show, which is very unusual for us. But 4th of July weekend is in the middle of that. But we will be back July 20th. But before that, I want to make sure folks know about the show that I'm hosting on Thursday, Shining Light on Shadows, a candid conversation about mental health. We're at episode 32, and our guest will be Patricia Kroom. And the topic we'll be talking about boundaries as it comes to mental health. Is it strong boundaries or weak boundaries that you use to protect yourself? And the three of us, Don Helmrich Newberg is my co-host. We all have different perspectives on this issue. So I hope you have a chance to join. Again, as a reminder, Muck Rack is our sponsor for the New York Times Read Along. We always appreciate their support. And the show is produced by Digimentors, the consulting firm that Sri started several years ago with his good friend from Columbia, Andrew Lee. Sri, it's always a pleasure. It's going to be, I don't know what I'm going to do Sunday mornings for the next few weeks. I'm not going to be waking up at 6 a.m. getting ready for the show. But it will be good to spend some time with family. I joke every week about saying hi to my mom, and that's my only phone call. But in fact, for 10 of those days, I'll be in New York. So I'll be visiting with Amy. My sister is flying from Seattle. I'll see my mom a couple times. We'll also go to Connecticut. It'll be good to have some time. The other thing I am doing, just so folks know, is next weekend I will be going to Milwaukee for a conference, and this is related to the work that I've done that Digimentors has been a supporter of. If you know, I co-hosted a show 2 years ago on focusing on male survivors, a bit of a trigger warning, male survivors of sexual abuse. And my co-host, Candace Sanchez, who has a long-running podcast, is organizing this conference called Paths to Healing to bring together a number of different folks, survivors, with resources and a chance to reflect. Digimentors is one of the sponsors of this conference, so thank you to Digimentors. We'll be restoring and then reflecting. And I'm going to be doing a presentation there on our Shining a Light on Shadows podcast, focusing on mental health for survivors.
Thank you. Thank you for all the work you do, Neil. Thank you for all the work you do. And let's bring Sara back to tell us one more time about her debut novel. Sara, over to you.
Thank you so much, Neil and Suri, for giving me this platform and allowing me to just share a little bit about this journey, because it has taken me a long time. And suddenly there's a wonderful embrace of the story that I wasn't sure how it would affect people. So What Will People Think is about a Palestinian American comedian in New York City. And Mia, the main character, discovers her grandmother's diary that details an illicit love affair with a British soldier back in Jaffa in 1947. And I think it's especially meaningful because we need to be able to tell joyful, uplifting stories that feature Arab women, and in this case, specifically Palestinian. We witnessed a humanitarian crisis over the past couple of years, but the reality is that this has been 75 years plus of trauma that, in this case, the main character tries to process through comedy. And the hope is that readers will find universality in embracing kindness and shared humanity and love for one another and for peace. And I would love if you would let me know what you think of What Will People Think when you read it. Thank you so much.
Terrific. Congratulations, Sara, and looking forward to getting you back in the US so that you can do your book tour. Jonathan says, great show, thank you. And Mary Curtis says, lovely perspectives from your global guests and an escape. It's amazing how Trump has gobbled up every aspect of society, not just politics, but also arts, sports, history. It's suffocating. So great to have this escape at this moment. So everyone, please pick up this book and also tell your family and friends to find Sara's book, What Will People Think? Thanks very much, everybody. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Have a great summer.
Dr. Tachi says, fantastic show as usual. And Apollo says, this is an awesome show. Sri, Neil, and Sara, have a great week ahead. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you in a couple of weeks, but we look forward to coming back. And Ellen is doing what we encourage people to do, going back to the beginning. Right as soon as we're done, you'll be able to watch the show on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube, and our website from the very beginning to get the parts that you missed. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.
Thank you. Have a good day.